saved a bunch of good stuff for the end of the afternoon, so thank you for bearing with us. China, as many of you know, is in the midst of an incredible effort to start an AI revolution, to invest in artificial intelligence. It's in fact led and encouraged by the government, spending hundreds of billions of dollars as part of the Made in China 2025 plan to become a leader in the technology. And its companies are mobilizing very quickly as well. They're working very hard not only to invest in AI, but also to nurture and develop the talent that's necessary locally to be a leader in the field. If all those efforts bear fruit, it's very possible, some think, that China could become a global leader in artificial intelligence, an area that many think is the key to the future of the global economy. So it's a fascinating topic to watch, and please join me in welcoming to share their insights on the state of AI in China, Mr. Zhifei, Tom Rosamilia, and Wang. Gentlemen. Thank you, welcome, thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Zhifei.
Wang, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to the dinner.
So, artificial intelligence, a huge topic for everybody around the world. I'm struck by just remembering a McKinsey report that came out about a year and a half ago, which had this very useful framework for thinking about different types of innovation. And they broke down 4 different categories of innovation. Consumer-led, efficiency and kind of manufacturing-led, and then they had one for engineering-led and one for sort of pure research-led. And I'm not sure where you would put AI in that category because it's the one that kind of knits many of those things all together. But if I could, I'd maybe like to start with you, Tom, and ask for kind of your thought as to where China is now in terms of its capabilities in AI. And we should just say that Tom is Senior Vice President for IBM Systems here, has been in China, really is on top of all the different forms of AI here, and I thought would have a really excellent perspective for us on kind of how the evolution of the China market in AI is going.
And I would just step back and look at the world first and then focus on China.
Okay.
For the world, I think AI is evolving. As you said, it's multimodal here, and it's happening obviously in the consumer space, and that's happening now. We see that every day, and you'll hear that from some of my colleagues, and I experience that all the time, as do all of you. And then there's sort of the eventual AI, which is the general AI that I think is sort of, the scientists would say 2050 and beyond, which is black box, truly autonomous computing, and that's plus or minus 10 years. I don't know that far out. But what we're experiencing right now is general AI, and this general AI is really applying to healthcare. It's applying to anything with volumes of data, where we can apply machine learning and do pattern recognition and inferencing to detect these patterns. And we're seeing it in healthcare. We're seeing it in the industrial segment. We're seeing it in financial services. I just came from Wuchen, where we were talking about AI here in China, and I see it happening here just the same way. And I think it's, some people would make it a battle between the US and China. I don't see it that way. I think there's so many contributions that all of us can make. I get contributions from my China research lab. I get contributions from my labs based in New York. And so I think it's happening all over, and it's going to change the world, and it's happening right now.
It's very interesting. When we think about AI, we often sort of think about it in tandem with robotics as well. And there's this sort of raging debate about whether, which economies in which states of development are more suited to AI and robotics. And there is a certain school of thought that says AI and robotics don't play to China's strengths because China still has lots of labor. We've got to provide jobs for people. They play more to the strengths of more advanced economies where labor is expensive. And there's kind of an argument, I suppose, that if you can get robots to do everything, why do you need to locate in a market like China? Why wouldn't you locate, in wealthier kind of end destination countries like the U.S.? What are your thoughts about that? AI, does it play to China's strengths? Will it be a bastion of that, or does it play to China's disadvantages?
Again, before we get to robots, I think AI will change the way we work.
I was out there and my mic was on.
It's doing that today.
My mic was on, even though...
The voice of God.
Well, it was.
They're speaking to us now, the robots. No, I think it's changing the way we work today, and it's going to change jobs fairly dramatically, and certainly in consumer-facing segments. And robots could do some of that. And
you didn't hear my...
Chatbots will do a lot of that, or doing that more today. But I think it's going to incorporate technology into all aspects of work, and so adding technology is a key aspect to people's skills, and that's why we're investing. I think actually robots will play an even greater role in aging economies. You know, if you look at what's going on in Japan, just reading about the birth rate in Italy, they're going to need a lot of help from robots to take care of old people like me someday, to help us live at home unassisted or assisted by robots. So I think a lot of that is the consumer-facing side, and these guys probably can tell you more about the consumer-facing side, how that can help consumers every day.
So you're bookended by two guys with similar backgrounds in many ways. You are both ex-Googlers, educated in the United States, and are involved in the consumer end of AI here. Let me ask Zhifei first from Mobvoi. How many people here have heard of Mobvoi? Not bad. Okay, so maybe you better explain to people a little bit what it is you do and what your products and technology is.
So Mobvoi represents mobile voice, which means we're doing mobile voice recognition. Right. So the Chinese name is called 出门问问. Basically, when you go outdoor, you should ask. So it's really a voice search engine for mobile environment.
So if we say 出门问问, then it's more familiarity, the Chinese? Maybe not. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, maybe we should do more advertising. So what we're doing, basically, we are developing the core voice interaction technology, including speech recognition, natural language understanding, integration with the service, and also with text-to-speech. So it's basically a closed-loop dialogue system. And then we also develop a device which this voice interaction might make sense. For example, a smartwatch, smart mirror in the car, and a smart speaker, and also smart earphone. So basically, for all those device environment and the settings, voice interaction might be the most important interaction method between human and machine.
What's been your most successful product so far?
I mean, most of the products are pretty successful, but right now the main revenue comes from the smartwatch. So I think different devices play a different role. So for this one, it's really a device. When you go outside, when you're running, when you just want to see a notification, you can just use your smartwatch, right? But for smart speaker, it's really used in the home environment. You want to sit in a way lazy way. You just interact with the speaker. Don't need to go to there because it's far field voice interaction. Then in the car, it's really useful when driving and using the phone altogether is very dangerous, right? So you can just use voice to interact with the machine. So I think they're successful in different scenarios.
So what would be an example of some commands or things that you could ask your device that was in a car?
Right. So basically, so imagine if you get into the car, you want to go to airport, you can just say to the machine, say, navigate to the airport.
Right.
But when along the route, you just want to listen to some music, you can just say play some music, right? Or if you want to change the destination, you can just interrupt the machine and ask the machine to change the destination instead of like pick up your mobile phone, driving and type a new address. That's really dangerous. Right?
So this is a device that you can put in your car, but it can also be built into the car. Is that correct?
So that particular device is really a replacement of your rear view mirror.
Ah, the mirror device. Yes. I've seen that. Yeah. So that's part of the reason that you've got, in addition to investment from Google, investment from Volkswagen. Is that right?
Yes. So when we had a partnership with Google, because they certainly see us have developing some interesting product and features for smartwatch, and Google Android Wear want to come to China, so that's why they found us is the perfect partner, because we have the end-to-end solution. It's not just the technology. It's actually a product with hardware, software, UI, everything all together. So it's much easier for them to get into China market instead of find 10 partners and develop a system for 6 months, nothing happens. happened. I think the same thing happened for Volkswagen because we are more a product company. We develop the technology, but we actually deliver the product experience to the consumer. So if they want to get into the consumer space, it's much easier for them to partner with us instead of a partner with some technology company, product company, and then distribution company, and build up the solution by themselves slowly.
Right. Is there something different about the technology that you're using that's, say, different than the technology that IBM has, that Amazon has with Alexa, that Google has in voice recognition and that sort of thing?
I think the technology are very similar. So all based on deep learning with huge amount of data. And I think our main difference is really because we control the technology and also the product itself and the hardware itself. So we can do a lot of tight integration in order to make a better user experience. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is because we have a device for different scenarios. We have a device for the car, we also have a device for the home, and we also have a device for the watch and for the earphone. So all these devices are get connected. So which means you can, when you're at home, you can monitor what happened in your car. And when you're driving, you can turn on your air conditioning in your home because you have a device in the home. So that's really a unique aspect of.
So how would the functions of, say, your watch compare to a smartwatch or like an Apple Watch or something like that?
Right. So I mean, first of all, the design are pretty different. I think like this smart watch is much more like a watch,
right,
while the Apple Watch is really like a tech product, right?
Right.
So the price also are different, and some local features are quite different here. For example, we are partner with the bank, and we are also partner with the subway system here in order to use NFC to payment and public transportation.
Great. So Wang Yi, can I ask you about, now the English name here that they've provided me is Lingo Champ, but that's not what actually you go by these days, right? You're called Liulishuo.
Very good.
And that, for people that speak Chinese, will communicate very clearly what it is that your company does.
That literally means speak fluently.
Speak fluently. There we are. So tell us about your business model and how you teach people to speak what fluently.
Okay. Well, there's a long version, there's a short version. But basically, when I arrived at Princeton, where I did my PhD in computer science, I got almost 4 score in TOEFL test. But when I first went to that McDonald's, the waiter couldn't understand me. And I basically said, okay, number 2. That's how I ordered my first meal at McDonald's. But then, fast forward, after I did my 2 years at Google as a product manager and returned back to China, based in Shanghai, I was having lunch with a lot of my colleagues, young colleagues. They would tell me, hey, I pay so much in learning languages in those online, offline schools, but really, didn't really finish. And then they would ask me, hey, should we be watching more American TV shows, movies? I'm like, dude, you've spent so much time and money, and you're clearly clueless, right? So at that point, I'm like, okay, this is a problem I really didn't think of it when I was in Silicon Valley, right? And then there was, if you guys remember, in China, back in the May, so Labor Day weekend of 2012, that karaoke app, Changba, became instant sensation. I was like, this looks very stupid, right? Who would be singing to their phones? But apparently I was wrong. A lot of people did. I'm like, okay, if they would be singing to their phones, maybe they could also be practicing English. Especially coming from Silicon Valley, we know that a lot of people, if their career would be much better off if they can speak fluent English and have the cultural understanding. So I'm like, okay, this might be an angle. Then I started, put on my product manager hat and started thinking, hey, how would I make this product engaging enough so that people would keep practicing, keep using? I'm like, okay, it has to be somewhat gamified, and it has to be able to provide instant feedback. So then I called upon my college buddy and the Lin Hui, who was a research scientist on Google's speech recognition team, basically this AI team. He was an expert, just as Zhifei, on speech recognition and data mining. I'm like, hey, can we do real time scoring on people's English pronunciation? He said, yes. I said, the bandwidth is very expensive back in the days. Can we do it offline? He said, with some effort, yes. I'm like, okay, why don't you, why don't we do something together? So I poached him out of Google. So that's, sort of how we all got started. But long story short, right now, after, we started in September 2012, so a little bit over 5 years. Over the years, we've collected the world's largest speech corpus, speech database of Chinese people speaking English. And based on that, we built, which we believe, the most accurate speech pronunciation evaluation engine and the speech evaluation engine in the world, especially for language learners. So we are, able to tell someone with a bad pronunciation from someone with a good pronunciation but bad grammar. We can give people very accurate score and pinpoint the mistakes on their pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary, fluency, and coherence.
So, tell us how many learners you have on your database now. How
we have over 50 million registered users. That's our free user base. We launched our first and pretty much the only paid product, which was the world's first AI teacher on mobile phone for English back in July of 2016. By this July, so 12 months in, we have over 600,000 paying customers.
And how much does it cost?
Yeah, it's pretty disruptive. We charge people like 99 RMB a month, so that's basically $15 a month. So for those of you who don't live in China, typically learning English costs about, between, on the low end, $1,500. Yeah. Or on the high end, I would say $4,000 per year, okay? Give or take. So that's basically what we're saying. It's basically 1/30 of the cost annually. And we are actually also offering something more effective and efficient. So we basically tell people it's 1/30 of the cost and 1/3 of the time. We use, ETS, which also is in Princeton. We use ETS's test called TOEIC Bridge. Its score maps to the canonical sort of language proficiency system called CEFR, the Common European Framework Reference. And basically, we use that as a benchmark. We realize, okay, within 2 months, our 400 test group of users have 60% of them have increased at least one level from A1 to A2 or from A2 to B1. Net, they've spent about 36.5 hours across that 2-month period.
Wow, that's fascinating.
But then CEFR would say, hey, it at least takes you about 100 hours to go up to one level. So that's the traditional method.
So do you know about the demographics of these people? I mean, what their ages are, where they live?
Yeah. For our free user pool, we have 1/3 about K-12 students, 1/3 college, and 1/3 sort of adults. Mostly adults,
really?
Yeah.
That's remarkable. And wow, that's. I'm interested though that you said that you've built this these algorithms, this voice recognition system that helps Chinese speakers to learn English. That sounds like a fairly specific thing. Do these algorithms, could you easily reverse them around so that you could help English speakers to learn Chinese?
As is, we've done some, Cambridge assessment, which is the co-owner and producer of the IELTS test, which competes with TOEFL, right? They came out of Cambridge. They've done some experiment with, Spanish native speakers and Arabic native speakers, in addition to Chinese and others. They've been very satisfied with our level of accuracy, not only on pronunciation, but also on natural language understanding, which translates into grammatical error detection and across different spectrums. And now they're moving forward with the co-branded app with us.
So
it sounds like one of the things that he's really got going for him is this corpus of data, though. It sounds like having all this data, having all these examples of good and bad.
Correct. So we started from collecting this, bits and pieces of pronunciation data, right? Speech data, right?
Yeah.
But then, after we launched this AI teacher course, it's a structured course, it's a multi-level course. Right. Then now we started basically, quote unquote, recording people's full study trace. Imagine, when you were studying at schools, when we were in schools, we took exams. Those are snapshots of your learning status, okay? These are, sporadic. These are, not continuous. But now we basically have people's learning trace every step along the way, you know, for these guys. And remember, you know, now they're spending on average 5 hours a week on the app. So it's a lot of data.
But so in China, though, you're going to have people that that their most comfortable language is Shanghai-hua, or that it's Guangdonghua. You know, people that are Cantonese, Shanghainese speakers, really different, right? And so the way in which they approach English, the things they get wrong, the things they get right, they have difficulty pronouncing, must be a broad spectrum. Does it matter, or it doesn't matter at all what the original dialect is?
Well, it does matter if you want to help them improve, right? So that's why, you know, we actually understand, you know, a lot about that. So we know people from Guangdong, you know, would tend to have certain mistakes. You know, people from, say, I don't know, Sichuan, they will have some other types of mistakes.
Other types of mistakes.
Yes. So, you know, we, from, you know, pronunciation courses to other courses, we give them personalized feedback and curriculum. So what I didn't mention, which I should, is that in that AI English teacher course, at the back, it's the adaptive learning engine at work.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, it basically would analyze, you know, on the one hand, the product it's highly interactive, it's gamified. So a lot of data coming in, and, you know, the engine would analyze it and start pumping out, you know, expert generated content, but in a individualized way. It's like, you know, Toutiao for learning, basically.
So interesting. So you're going to put a lot of American English teachers in China out of work, no doubt, with this app.
Well, I mean, you know, the one funny thing is that it's a huge market. Okay.
Yeah.
Some people would, I think, for the time being, would still prefer to talk to a real human teacher, which is perfectly fine. But, you know, 80%, more than 80% of our paying customer base was paying for the very first time.
Third of the time, third of the cost, and you can do it on your mobile phone is a pretty hard proposition to resist. That's a serious question, though, Tom. I mean, this is an issue for all types of AI, is what does it do to job prospects? I mean, we hear these numbers out there. You know, everybody cites the Oxford study that says that 40%, 47% of jobs are going to be wiped out. I know McKinsey's done some interesting stuff that even something simple, like if voice recognition technology improved about 10 percentage points and just got to the kind of the mean of human capability, that it will wipe out all these call centers in Bangalore and Manila.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? And is that too dire, or do you think that's?
I think jobs change, and I think they change in every revolution we go through. I think the Industrial Revolution caused all kinds of job change. Actually, you know, we're not plowing fields anymore by hand. That changed a lot of jobs. So we moved from agrarian to industrial to the tech industry and now to AI. So I think it will absolutely fundamentally change the way we work. I think it will change a lot of people who are consumer facing, whether they're in retail or whatever area, whether it's a call center, whatever they're doing. But I think it doesn't, the work we're doing on healthcare doesn't replace the doctor. The work we're doing, having, you know, all this data, I mentioned the data because he has the data. We bought a lot of data in healthcare. It's not publicly available data to have all these images to scan, to build up at this learning repetition of what's a cancer cell and what's not. So you really need all that data. We're improving the odds, improving the efficiency, improving the efficacy of people who are reading these images, not replacing them. So I think, you know, for professionals in these fields, I don't think they're at any risk at all. I think if you look at truck drivers, I'm not so sure that autonomous vehicles aren't going to replace truck drivers.
Right.
And so I think that part of it, you know, certainly they're going to have to change from the world in some of these roles to other positions. But I don't think we're going to replace teachers, even if we have outstanding language learning apps. I don't think we're going to replace doctors, even if we have, you know, with Watson Health, we can do an awful lot of things to help those doctors make accurate diagnosis. He's serving an underserved market. Think about all the people in Western China who don't have access to top, you know, all of China who don't have access.
I'm glad that, you know, Tom, you know, obviously he knows China pretty well, you know, mentioned this. The reality is there is a huge undersupply of qualified teachers in China, whether it be, you know, it's English or math or anything, okay? Yunnan province in southwest China, you know, 70% of the schools lack English teachers. Heilongjiang province, northeast, 50% of school lack English teachers, okay? We donated 100 smartphones to a rural orphanage school of Tibetan kids in Qinghai Highlands, 4,000 meter elevation. You know, They don't have English teachers. The only full-time English teacher they had was a volunteer from Guangdong, actually. She quit her job at a Fortune 500 company and went there to volunteer for 1 year. Okay, then she mentioned this to us, and we went and we donated our phones. And then, for the past year, from fall of 2016 to this past June, for 2 semesters, those kids' English class was taught by their math teacher. The math teacher would just be handing out the devices, and 45 minutes later, he would recollect them. And then the kids would be, learning at their own pace.
So, but here's my question to you. If we have the technology to teach people to speak English, and if maybe it can go the other way around so we can teach people to speak Chinese, that's great. But, if you look at why it is that people are so keen to speak English in China, it's because they think it will improve their job prospects. And if the technology that is good at teaching them is also the same technology that's wiping out their job.
I think they all need to learn some tech. I think that what we're seeing is the inclusion of technology in everything people do. So we've actually established a 6-year learning program. Think of it, if you're US-based, like high school and community college. But you can come out with a tech degree and go into a lot of different industries by having 6 years of tech prep to get you into doing financial services, but using data science as a way of doing that, or doing healthcare as a tech, but doing it with a knowledge of technology. So I think the changes that are happening is everybody's got to learn tech.
We get maybe time for a question or two if we have any from the audience. See a hand go up. Zhifei, let me ask you, what's the next wave in devices? Where do we go from here? You've got watches, you've got your connected cars. I saw that you create a thing that you can hang in the shower and you can sing into, right?
Yeah, I think for us, our company mission is to define the next generation human-computer interaction.
Yeah, similar to what Tom was saying.
So when we founded the company, we don't know what that means. We just know that the keyboard and the touchscreen is not the natural way of human interact with human, right? So I think now everybody agrees that voice interaction is going to be very important in the future. But right now, it's not popular yet. Right? Because if you look at the major interaction still through touch in the mobile phone, that's really because 95% of the smart devices are smartphone, right? But if you really imagine what happened in the next 3 or 5 years, I think the number of devices or the proportion of devices will totally change. Because today, mobile phone, the year-over-year growth is already quite flat. But if you look at the smart device like smartwatch, smart speaker, smart earphone, smart car, they're all growing like 30, 40, 50, 100%, right? So you can do a simple math. After 3 years, I think more than 30% of the smart device will be non-mobile device. And most of those devices don't have a touch. They don't have a keyboard.
Right.
So then voice interaction will become one of the major way of interact between human and machine.
In many of our panels, one of a theme that keeps cropping up is that China's scale is enormously beneficial. It's, whether it's ride sharing or bike sharing or e-commerce or any of these things, the ability to roll it out over hundreds of millions, even 1 billion people, and then especially when you get into big data, the ability to have so much data, crunch it so quickly, gives China an enormous advantage over other markets. Is that the same for AI? Does the fact that you're able to sell devices to a larger set of people here give you an advantage in building algorithms for what AI can do in the future?
Absolutely. I think if you are developing a new category of device, you need to have a huge home market, right?
Yeah.
So I think China is really a huge home market for us.
Right. And so the voice recognition, the fact that you're absorbing all that in Chinese doesn't necessarily limit you from then taking that global and taking those algorithms and using them around the world.
I think the algorithm is universal. It's really the data are different.
Yeah.
So as long as you get enough data for different languages, then you can just train your machine with the same algorithm. Wow,
amazing. We're unfortunately out of time, but thank you very much for a fascinating discussion. Please join me in welcoming, thanking them for their contribution.